Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Let's go ahead and let people trickle in. And while we're waiting, let's go ahead and do a quick icebreaker. So in the chat below, make sure you say to everyone so that way we can see everyone's answers and say where you're from, what position are you? So like, are you an engineer? Are you a developer? And then as a really quick fun one, just tell me like, what's the very first piece of technology that you learned when you were younger? So to repeat that, just go ahead and tell me like in the chat, where are you from? What position are you at? And what is the first piece of technology that you learned when you were younger? So for me, I actually was learning web development first too. I started off with HTML and CSS, and we were doing it in Notepad. So that was a pretty fun experience. Let's see what we have here. See Cincinnati. We have people from Colombia, Germany, Truckee, Phoenix. Wow, we got people from all over. Stockholm, India, New Jersey, Poland. Love to see all these people from all over. Boston, a lot of people from Germany. All right, anyone else have anything? See Guatemala, Sri Lanka, Italy, wow, Canada. All right, thank you so much, everyone who took the time to come, no matter what time zone. Texas. Oh, started with C. That's like a really hard one I heard to start with. It's pretty impressive. Hello. All right, well, I'm waiting for that. Let's see. Scotland. Oh, nice. See, DevOps engineer intern. A lot of interns here today. SQL, Boulder. Nigeria, welcome. Hello from Switzerland, Kenya. We have a solution architects, DevOps engineers, love to see it. Right, for people who are just coming in now, just let me know in the chat, where are you from? What position are you at? And what's one piece of technology that you learned first? So in the early days. All right. I see that we have, yes, everyone's finished talking in the chat. Currently Christian is going to be joining us very soon. So while we're waiting for him, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Let's go ahead and kick everything off. Welcome to Kubernetes Deployments Made Simple, an intro to Argo CD. So thank you, everyone, for coming. My name is Angelica Ambrosio. I am a technical evangelist over at Akuity. So what that means is that my job is to help developers by creating educational content, such as guides, blogs, and webinars like this, so that way people can learn more about Argo CD, no matter what skill level they're at. And I'm joined here today with Christian Hernandez.
Hi everyone. Christian Hernandez here, head of community over here at Akuity. Going to be talking about, I think Angelica introduced, going to be talking about Argo CD, getting started with GitOps, going over kind of like an introduction, kind of like why we're using GitOps, why we use Argo CD, and kind of like how we got there.
Right. So just a quick heads up before we dive straight in. You'll see a few QR codes in the slides throughout the session, but no worries. We'll also drop those links in the chat for easy access. This webinar is also being recorded and we'll be posting it to the Akuity YouTube channel shortly. So be sure to subscribe to our Akuity YouTube channel at youtube.com/akuityo, so that way you'll be notified of its release. Also, heads up, there is a short quiz coming up later. Nothing stressful. I'm not grading anyone here. It's just a fun way to review what we've covered. So feel free to drop any questions in the chat or the Q&A down below. So let's go ahead and look at our agenda today. So here's the agenda for today. We'll be briefly discussing some key concepts such as Kubernetes and GitOps, which are crucial for a better understanding of Argo CD. So let's first start off with the tip of the Argo CD iceberg. This is just all the surface level stuff. In this section, we'll cover the who, what, and why before diving into deeper waters. So let's start off with the creators of Argo CD, who are like the founders of Akuity. So I'll go ahead and pass this on to Christian so he can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Akuity, we are founded by the creators of Argo CD and the Argo project as a whole, right? So our co-founders here, Hong, Jesse, and Alex, they actually worked at Intuit. They were at Intuit around the time when like Kubernetes was first coming up, and Intuit made a strategic move to migrate over to not only Kubernetes but everything in the cloud, right? No more VMs, no more racking servers, none of that. They're moving completely to the cloud. Oh, and by the way, on top of that, they were adopting Kubernetes as well. So at that time, Kubernetes was a great foundational tool for orchestrating containers, orchestrating applications, but the user experience actually wasn't there, right? They had this need to migrate over to Kubernetes, over to the cloud, but they didn't really have any tools to do that. So what did they do? They created the Argo project, right? The Argo project, which includes Argo CD, is a suite of tools with the user experience in mind, right? They didn't want to go and teach Kubernetes, teach all these primitives, these new concepts to application developers, right? Application developers, they want to get that application onto Kubernetes and be able to monitor, manage, and triage those issues. But they didn't really want to teach them, right? Like they had this need, they had this migration need, and they didn't have the time to teach all these concepts of Kubernetes. So what they did is they created a suite of tools that are with the user experience in mind to migrate their applications over to Kubernetes. They did that by creating the Argo project with using GitOps as a cornerstone, right? With using GitOps as a method to get that done, because Git and Git workflows is kind of a native language to application developers.
All right, thank you, Christian. So a lot of the things Christian talked about, so like Kubernetes containers, we're all going to discuss today. So no worries if everything kind of just went over your head. So let's talk about application deployment as a whole. So in the world of modern software development, managing application deployments efficiently and reliably is more important than ever. As teams adopt microservices and cloud-native technologies, tools that support automation and scalability have become essentials. One such tool is Argo CD. Argo CD makes Kubernetes deployments, well, as the name suggests, simple. I'd like to share a personal experience about the time I made a deployment without using Argo CD. So let me set the scene. I was in college and I was taking a DevOps course, so I was completely new, just like a lot of you here in the webinar. And we had this massive final project, the capstone, which was worth like half of our grade. So I went all out on this project because I did not want to have to take this class again. So I built a fully containerized web application for like a fictional boutique. But then we had like a big rubric of things that we needed in our project. So I had like an interactive product catalog, a shopping cart system. We even had like imaginary newsletters and like little sign up forms for them. So I also did like the extra credit, and I bought a custom domain to go with it to like say, hey, I can get extra credit. I put money into this, right? So I was ticking off every box in the rubric, and I got to the last part, the final task, which is deploy. So I just needed to get it live and then send in the link, and then woohoo, I can enjoy my spring break, right? Easy, right? Or so I thought. I followed all the steps to deploy the app manually, and that's when everything just fell apart. The process was slow, painfully slow. So when I was ready to deploy, I threw the commands into the terminal, and when it finally loaded, I just got an error. And then like I'd fix one little problem in the code, and then boom, there was a new error. It felt like I was playing a game of whack-a-mole because every time I took something out, something else would come in its place. And I was a college student. I had like other courses and stuff. So I was running out of time because that due date was like right around the corner. So I was getting really impatient. I'm like, oh my gosh, please just deploy live. That's all I ask. So due date finally comes. I showed up to my class, and instead of having a link to the live, website, I just had the link to my source code. So then my professor was going around the room. I remember she came up to me and she took a look at the link I turned in, and she said like, I think you forgot a step there. And then I was like laughing nervously. I was like, well, actually, there's a funny story about that. And I explained everything that happened. And then like I even tried deploying it in front of her to show like this is what's going on. Like I'm not just making this up because I didn't do it. And then she looked at it and took one look and said, I have never seen anything like this. So that's like not the kind of thing that you want to hear from your professor for the class. So we tried deploying again together, but the process was super slow and it was tedious and unreliable. So my professor was like baffled. She threw in the towel. She was like, all right, let's just give you an extension. And I had to just basically redo the entire project from scratch. And it was sucked because I spent like my spring break just trying to reconfigure this one project. So they say hindsight is 2020. So looking back now, all I can think of is if only I had known about Argo CD at the time, it could have handled like the whole mess for me. It automates a lot of these manual processes that I was just sitting in my dorm room trying to do myself each time just to get a new error. And then like it was a lot easier with Argo CD because that way you actually see what's going on. Like I was just looking at the black screen of a terminal trying to figure out what was going on. So with Argo CD, you get a UI, which is the user interface, making it way easier to troubleshoot. It would have saved me so much time, reduced errors, and made the entire process far more manageable. So it brings me to the question, what is Argo CD used for? Other than saving DevOps engineers headaches, Argo CD is a GitOps tool for Kubernetes deployments. We're going to unpack this sentence today by covering the basics of what GitOps is and Kubernetes. By the end, everything should click. This whole sentence should make sense. So let's put a pin in this and keep this in mind. So Argo CD is a widely popular tool in the DevOps space, and for good reason. Here's a few reasons why it is popular with developers. Number one, easy GitOps deployments. With Argo CD, deploying your app becomes as easy as pushing your changes to a Git repository. Instead of doing everything manually, you tell Argo CD what your app should look like, and it takes care of the rest for you. No need to memorize a bunch of terminal commands like I was doing for my capstone. Number two, syncs apps with Git automatically. When you make a change in your Git repository, like updating a file or releasing a new version, Argo CD automatically updates your app to match. This means your app is always in sync with the latest version of your code. Number three, visual app status and history. Argo CD gives you a clear, easy to understand dashboard. You can see what's running, what's changed, and if something isn't working. If your app breaks or something's out of place, Argo CD will help you spot it right away. So back to my capstone, if I had just used Argo CD, it would tell me exactly what's wrong instead of me just picking apart at all the manifests to see what would happen. Let's take a look at benefits across the whole team, the whole development team as a whole, and the organization. So here are the key benefits organizations can expect with Argo CD. So number one, of course, less manual work. With Argo CD, you don't have to manually update or redeploy your applications every time there's a change. So if I just take out like one line, I don't have to keep manually updating it, right? So once it's set up, Argo automates the process. So you can focus more on building and less on troubleshooting deployments. And number two, built-in security and audit. Since Argo CD uses Git as a source of truth, every change is tracked. You know who changed what, when, and why. That built-in audit trail not only helps with troubleshooting, but also supports compliance and security best practices. And number three, faster, safer releases. By automating your deployments and syncing with Git, Argo CD helps you release updates quickly with fewer mistakes. And if something goes wrong, we can just roll back to a previous version with just a click. And then lastly, more reliable systems. Argo CD helps keep your environments consistent. Whether it's dev, staging, or production, your app is deployed exactly the same way each time. That consistency makes your systems more stable and predictable. So, Argo CD isn't just a cool tool. It's trusted by over 400 organizations in the US alone. From startups to large enterprises, teams rely on it every day to simplify and secure their deployments. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this in the chat. This is just a list of the official users. You can take a look at this afterwards and see like how many people really use Argo CD. All right, so let me go ahead, take a breath. Before we dive deeper, let's actually take a step back. In this next section, we'll give a quick overview of Kubernetes, the platform that Argo CD was designed to work with. So remember I told you that story about struggling to deploy one little app? Now imagine that same chaos multiplied by hundreds of applications across an entire company. It sounds pretty stressful, right? I'm stressed out just thinking about it. But here's the good news. Problems like that are exactly what drives smart solutions to be created. Kubernetes was originally built by Google based on the way they run their own systems behind the scenes. It's called Borg, or it was called Borg, and was designed to handle huge amounts of traffic in complex systems. So it's powerful, reliable, and built for scale. Kubernetes is like the conductor of an orchestra, as it's an orchestration platform. Kubernetes steps in to manage all of that at scale, making sure every app or container is in tune and performing on cue. Overall, Kubernetes handles a lot of the heavy lifting for you. It can automatically roll out new versions of your app, increase or decrease the number of instances based on the traffic, and restart things if they crash and burn, without you having to manually step in every time and kind of babysit, right? So let's explore some key Kubernetes terms you ought to know. So I've probably been using some of them already, but this is just a review for people who are not familiar with these terms. So first things first, what is a container? So picture them like a briefcase that carry everything that an application needs to work. Your code, your tools, your settings, you name it. Just like you can take your briefcase from home to the office and still get your job done, containers let apps run the same way no matter where they're deployed. So like I can take my briefcase to work and I can still use everything there and everything will run smoothly. If I take my briefcase to Starbucks, I can work on it there and it will still work the same way. So it's just extremely a portable way to carry your code. So that means a containerized app is an application that's packaged together with everything it needs to run, like its code, its setting, its tools. So it's like a little tiny starter pack inside a container. So let's talk about, oh, go ahead.
So real quick, going back to the container, I'm just kind of I remember a time, so this is like kind of my story of like why a container is really, if you think back to a time where with a time of VMs, and anytime I talk about VMs, it's like we didn't really solve anything with VMs. Because I came from a time where you have to rack individual servers, right? We call them pizza boxes. So kind of show you how old I am, but like every server was like this, tiny one-use server, and each one of those servers hosted an application, right? And as you can imagine, like you just kind of run out of room after a while, like trying to rack all these servers. So then we compounded the problem by introducing VMs. Someone joked that VMs were allowed Windows administrators to keep doing the same terrible things, just at massive scale, because we'd actually really solved the problem, right? We solved the problem with density, right? Like we can buy a big server and like slice it up into individual virtual machines, but the problem is you still get a whole operating system, you still get a whole virtual machine, and try to hosting. Back in the day, we tried to save money by hosting 4, 5, 6 different applications on the same server or in the same VM. But then what happens if one application requires a different version of a library that another application does? Well, you upgrade the library, all of a sudden you break one application by trying to upgrade this application. So what was the solution? Well, then every application got its own VM. So we actually didn't really solve any problems, right? Whereas, so the really cool thing about the container is that you actually now, like you said, you have the briefcase. Now, like everything that the application needs to run runs in this like little convenient package that you can actually get even more dense, without having to, install an entire operating system, right? You just install the libraries and everything the application needs to run. And then you can run 2 containers on the same server without them interfering with each other, right? And so, but the problem was with, with that is like, okay, well, now I have hundreds of thousands of containers. How do I manage that, right? And I think that's the problem Kubernetes was trying to solve. Like we everyone loved containers, but there was absolutely no orchestration for those containers. So it's kind of the container is like kind of like the evolution of like how do I run an application as small as possible, but with everything that it needs.
Right. Let me go ahead and move on to our next vocab word tech term. So let's go to pods and nodes. So if you're already kind of familiar with the Kubernetes space, you will know like these are everywhere. So a Kubernetes pod is a group of containers that run and manage together. So I have some examples. So think of it like a pod of whales, which is what we call like a group of whales. Or think of it like peas in a pod, right? They're just a group. So these are all containers in a group. So Kubernetes uses these pods to organize, run, and scale your apps. You could think of it like a wrapper that holds one or more containers that need to work together. So like I have the example, the pod of whales, the peas in a pod. These containers share the same space and can talk to each other easily. Usually a pod can have one container, but sometimes it includes more if they're tightly connected. A node is basically like a computer. It can be a physical machine or a virtual one that runs in your app. Think of Kubernetes like a team, like your team at work. And each node is your team member, your coworkers. Each one does the work of running part of your application. So every node has the tools it needs to run containers, handle networking, and report back to the main system, which we call the Kubernetes control plane. You can have lots of nodes, and Kubernetes will spread your apps across them to keep everything running smoothly and reliably. And then last but not least, let's talk about Kubernetes clusters. So let's take a step back and talk about the big picture, Kubernetes clusters. A cluster is just a group of nodes working together to run your apps. There's also a boss in the group called the control plane. It tells the other nodes what to do, where to run things, and how to keep everything healthy. A Kubernetes cluster is like a team. Some are workers, while one is the manager, all working together to keep your app running smoothly, even if something goes wrong. This setup makes it easy to scale, update, and recover from problems all automatically. So we have this team working without my intervention. I already gave them the instructions. They know what they need to do, right? So let's take a moment, think about it. Because Kubernetes automates all these otherwise time-consuming deployment tasks, it unlocks a ton of powerful benefits that make life way easier for teams. You get to launch faster, you get to keep things running smoothly, use less while doing more, and automation can free up developers' time to focus on what they do best, right? Develop great applications. So Kubernetes is highly adaptable and widely used across industries. Here are some real-world examples of how it's put to work. So Kubernetes is powerful for managing apps, but Argo CD builds on that by adding GitOps into the mix, a way to manage deployments through something we call Git. Let's dive into what that means next. So let me take a moment, let you guys see what's on board, and then I'm going to move to the next slide. Getting into GitOps. So let's talk about what Git does and why it's so useful. Why do we want to use GitOps? First, Git tracks changes to your files over time, so you can always go back to a previous version if something breaks. Second, Git takes a picture of your files at the moment and saves it. This snapshot can't be changed, so if you ever go back to it, your project will look exactly like it did when you saved it. So that means, or what we call it is immutable. That means if I make any changes to the file, it's not going to reflect on that version. It's just going to make a new version, right? So that way I can use the project state in certain periods of time instead of thinking like, oh, great, now I have to control Z everything, right? So lastly, Git lets you create branches. So you or your team can try out new ideas, fix bugs, or build features all at once without stepping on each other's toes. So I have a diagram really quick. So we have like our master branch. This is where all the main code is. Let's say I get an idea. Let's make a new feature. Then I can make a new branch. And then later I can put the new feature into the main branch. And then let's say, okay, and then my coworker said, hey, I have an idea for a new feature. and then they test it out a bit, it works, and then we merge it. So then we have the final product, which has the main branch's code with feature one's code and feature two's code. All right, now let's talk about two key concepts that drive how everything works: the desired state and the actual state. The desired state is your ideal setup. It's how you want your application to look and behave. You define this in your code and you store it in Git. That Git repository becomes your source of truth, the single place where your app's configuration lives. On the other side, the actual state is what's really happening in your Kubernetes environment right now. It reflects the live status of your application, what's running, how many pods or groups of containers, if you remember, which versions, and so on. This can also be called the observed state. So what we're doing is we have what we want the project to look like, which is our desired state, and then the actual state is like what's actually going on there. So ideally, these should be the same, right? Now let's talk about what happens if they're not. GitOps tools like Argo CD constantly compares the two states. So we have my Git repository with my manifests, and we have the Kubernetes cluster, which is our actual state. So let's take a look at both of them. And uh-oh, there's a problem. If the actual state drifts from what's in Git, Argo CD can alert you or even fix it, bringing everything back into sync automatically. So we have someone who's looking at both the states and seeing like, hey, this should look like the desired state. If it doesn't anymore, we have a controller that can alert us or fix it automatically so I don't have to do it, right? So now that we know all this about GitOps, let's take a look at the bigger picture, the key benefits of using GitOps. Because everything is stored and defined in Git, deployments are consistent, predictable, and easy to reproduce. There's no surprises. Every change is tracked, so you always know who made what changes and when. So that way, like, I can see if a team member is just erasing things or moving something slightly to the left, and I'll be like, okay, it was him, right? It's like having a detailed audit log automatically. Everyone works from the same source of truth, making it easier for developers, operations, and QA teams to stay aligned. If something goes wrong, you can quickly roll back to a previous version and restore your app to a working state. So let's say I go feature crazy and I add all these features to the point it doesn't work anymore. Then I can just roll back to when it was working. So that way we don't have to worry about trying to troubleshoot everything. That way something working is up and I can troubleshoot what went wrong, right? Argo CD brings the power of GitOps to Kubernetes, giving you the best of both worlds: automation with control and speed with stability. So I have a QR code here for anyone who wants to get deep into GitOps. So I have a beginner guide called Guide to GitOps, Getting into GitOps, right? So this is basically what I talked about, but more in depth. So if you want to know more about GitOps, you can just use that QR code below. And I believe there should be a link to it as well in the chat. Let's go ahead and review. So remember this, now that we've covered Kubernetes and GitOps, everything should click into place. So now that we know the context of GitOps and Kubernetes, this whole sentence should start to make more sense for everyone. Argo CD runs on Kubernetes and brings in GitOps principles. So that way you can get powerful automation with full visibility and control. All right, so I know I've been talking a lot and I know I've been giving everyone a lot of information, so I want to pause. So I'll take a deep breath. Whew, right? Before we jump right into the meat and potatoes Argo CD, I'd love to hear how you're feeling so far. A quick poll should pop up. So when you see this poll, you have three options. Number one being, I'm totally lost. No worries. This webinar is based on a beginner guide I wrote. I'm happy to share it. It will be in the chat shortly. Two, I'm getting the hang of it. You've got a solid start, right? You understand like the very basics of Kubernetes and GitOps. And number three, it all clicks now. Everything makes sense to me. It's all crystal clear. You could teach Kubernetes and GitOps to grandma, right? So pick the one that fits you best. I'm going to give everyone a minute to go ahead and fill out that poll. Just let me know like how you feel. Am I going too fast and you got lost, or everything's just perfect?
I would vote, but I think I would skew the skew the poll here.
All right, I think I gave enough time to do the poll. So let's go ahead and move right into the main course of today, which is dissecting Argo CD. So we're going to go under the hood and dissect Argo CD. Argo CD has a component-based architecture, meaning it is built with separate components, each with a clear role. That makes it flexible, easier to manage, and lets you reuse parts without starting from scratch. So I'm going to peel back all the layers of Argo CD. So we have what we call the 4 logical layers of Argo CD. This helps us understand how everything works together behind the scenes. So we have the first layer, which is in pink, user interface or the UI. This is what you see. This is what we interact with. It's a clean dashboard that shows your app status and lets you control your deployments easily. And then next we have in yellow, the application layer. This is where Argo CD defines and manages each app you're deploying. It keeps track of the desired state stored in Git. So remember, desired state is what we want it to look like. These are the instructions on how I want my application to look like. Argo CD is actively monitoring it. Remember, we're looking at both of them. And if actual state starts to drift a little and starts going on their own way, going rogue, we have Argo CD to put them back in line. So that way we match that desired state. Next, in blue is the core layer. This is the brain of Argo CD. It watches for changes and makes sure your apps match what's in Git. And then next, we have in green, the infrastructure layer. This is your foundation, like a house, right? It connects to Kubernetes and Git, handling the actual syncing and the updates. And then let's talk about how each layer plays a part in making GitOps work smoothly with Kubernetes. Kubernetes deployment's made simple, right? Let's see, let's talk about servers. I like to think of servers as the line of communication between you, whether you're the developer or the user, and the platform. So you probably see this term a lot, API. API just stands for Application Programming Interface. This is like the front desk. It's the main way you and other tools talk to Argo CD. Whether you're using the UI or a command line, it all goes through here. Next is the repository server. This one's in charge of talking to Git. As the name suggests, it is going into your Git repository, pulls in the app files, reads the manifest, and gets them all ready for deployment. All right, next one would be the image updater and Dex. So image updater keeps your apps fresh by automatically updating images from Docker. And then next would be Dex, which is making logging in easy by connecting to services like GitHub or Google. So this is in charge of authentication, and an image updater, as the name suggests, is updating all the images in Docker. And then we have controllers. This one is really important with Argo CD. So in Argo CD, the application controller is the component that keeps your app in sync with what's defined in Git. So now that we know what all these little components play in the Argo CD infrastructure, let's talk about how Argo CD works. So everything I discussed finally comes into play here. Argo CD works by combining several of these key components to keep your apps in sync with Git. The API server is how users and tools interact with Argo CD, while the repository server connects to your Git repo and prepares the app definitions. The application controller constantly checks the live state of your Kubernetes apps against what's in Git and automatically fixes any differences. Dex handles the authentication with external providers, and the image updater, if used for any reason, keeps your container images up to date by updating Git when new versions are available. Together, these components automate and streamline app delivery. All right, that wraps up some of the key components of Argo CD. Now, we're going to dive into the quiz, but I'm going to go ahead, take this time and look in the chat, see if we have any questions. See Q&A. Yes, so there will be a recording. This is going to be on the Akuity YouTube. So if you look us up, youtube.com, Akuity.io, and subscribe, you'll be notified right away of its release. All right, let me see what else. I see what is apps of apps in Argo CD. So that one may be like a more advanced topic for this webinar. But I believe maybe Christian, would you like to jump in on that question?
Yeah, really, really quick. App of Apps is basically an Argo CD application that deploys other Argo CD applications, right? Usually you have an Argo CD application deploying a service, deploying a deployment, right? Angelica, I think you have a demo in a little bit, deploying Kubernetes resources. But App of Apps, instead of deploying like a deployment, it deploys an Argo CD application. So it's basically a bootstrapping mechanism here for Argo CD. High level. That's very, very high level. Like Angelica said, that's beyond kind of like the scope of this webinar, but it's a good question.
Yes, so I want to start you guys off small. We're going like bottom, like the surface level, the top of the iceberg. That's like going lower down into the abyss. So let's
Yes, that's
keep
deep,
surface
deep, deep
level.
ocean right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the deep ocean right there. We're going up right on the surface.
Yeah.
Let's see. So he says, can I say app of apps is one way of scalability and application set is another way for scalability?
I wouldn't say scalability, more for bootstrapping and organization, right? You're not gaining anything in terms of scalability. It's more you're gaining more of management, right? You have a single point of management with those. App of Apps is definitely a good practice for production. There's many people using it in production.
All right, I have a question right here on the Q&A. Hello, at my company, we use Flux heavily. I've been looking at Argo, but I found that the Argo CD image updater is still not ready for production. What would be the alternative from Argo to replace the Flux image updater functionality to a production environment?
I absolutely love this question because Akuity has an amazing solution for it. So, yes, correct. The Argo CD image updater isn't really for production use yet. And this is actually what Cargo is used for, right? You can use Cargo for the same promotion process as you would image updater, except Cargo is a lot more flexible. It gives you orchestrating not only image updates but also config updates and things like that. So I would definitely would take a look at Cargo if image updater isn't working for you. Image updater works for a lot of people, but it's very, very narrow in use case, right? If you are finding yourself growing out of just using Argo CD image updater, definitely take Cargo for a spin. It solves a lot of the problems that image updater solves for, plus a lot more. So I will put the link in the chat for you to take a look. It is open source. So if everyone goes to cargo.io, it is open source. Download it, use it, join the Discord. We'll get a link for that later. Cargo is definitely the answer if you're looking for something that goes beyond image updater.
Right. Thank you, Christian. So I see that we have a lot of questions about best practices for Argo CD. As this is just explaining concepts of Argo CD, I actually have some resources later on in the webinar that will talk about resources for best practices for Argo CD. And one of them is a webinar that is coming up very soon. So stick around for that. Let's go ahead and check our understanding. So we have talked about Kubernetes, GitOps, Argo CD. So let's take a quick quiz. Just 2 questions, nothing to stress about. I'm not grading anyone, right? No grades on the line. I'm not failing you guys.
I'll say I hope I pass.
Pray that you pass this one. So first question, which component is responsible for generating application manifests that Argo CD uses to deploy to Kubernetes? So we have some options here. A, image updater, which we just talked about. B, the API server. Or C, the repository server. All right, the quiz is up right now, so go ahead and fill it out. Don't share your answers in the chat yet. You don't want people looking over your shoulder, right?
Oh, we got cheaters.
Automatic fail. Just kidding. So let's talk about the second question that you guys may have seen. Second question, Argo CD is implemented as a Kubernetes controller. So this was a big point I've talked about maybe 3 times today. What is a Kubernetes controller? It would make me so sad if you guys just forgot this because I talked about it so much. A small lightweight package that contains everything an app needs to run. B, internal Kubernetes component that manages and orchestrates the cluster state. Or C, a machine, virtual or physical, that provides the necessary resources for running your containerized applications. All right, I'm going to give everybody a minute Don't look in the chat. There's people posting their answers there. We're going to be honest here. So let's take another minute, let everybody answer. And let's see. Waiting on everyone. I'll give about maybe 10 more seconds. It's only 2 questions. Not grading anyone. Just pick the definition that you believe is the correct one, right? No pressure, right? This is a beginner class. All right, 10 seconds are up. Let's go ahead and take a look at the answers. So for number 1, if you answered C, repository server, you are correct. And why is that? Because A, image updater, as we talked about, updates the Docker images, right? It has nothing to do with the generating the application manifest. B is an API server. So as I talked about, an API server is us and tools talk to Argo CD. So it is not generating the application manifests. That would actually be the repository server. Because remember, your application manifests are in Git, which is your Git repository. Right, next is number 2. So if you answered B, internal Kubernetes component that manage and orchestrate the cluster state, kudos to you, right? So A is not the correct answer because a small, lightweight package that contains everything an app needs to run is a container. And then C, a machine, virtual or physical, that provides the necessary resources for running your containerized applications. That would be a node, right? So B is the only one that's correct, right? It is an internal Kubernetes component that manages and orchestrates the cluster state. And since it's got the word controller in it, it's like it's controlling everything. It's the puppet master, right? So let's go ahead and move on. I hope everyone got these right. Go ahead and share your scores in the bottom in the chat. And if you have any questions about the quiz, also drop those in the chat as well. All right, so I'm going to show a demo, but we need to talk about this first. So now that we covered the basics of Argo CD, what's the difference between Argo CD and Akuity? I hear this all the time at events. I hear it all the time at other webinars. I'm going to finally give an answer, right? Argo CD is the open source, do-it-yourself version. So open source means that the code is available for like the community to contribute to. So I can contribute to Argo CD, but like if it's something else, like let's say another program like my website, you can't exactly just start adding things in there, right? That is not open source, but Argo CD is open source, so you can contribute and everything the community is curating, right? So I like open source projects because that way I don't have to wait for like the official companies to start making bug fixes. So open source project that I use a lot is like I watch YouTube and I just hate the ads. So I use AdBlock, which is open source. So Argo CD is the open source do-it-yourself version. It's great if you want full control and don't mind rolling up your sleeves to manage everything yourself. With open source Argo CD, you usually install it inside each Kubernetes cluster where you want to deploy your apps. That means you have to manage and maintain it yourself. And you have to let Argo CD talk to your cluster, which means that you have to open up network access, which can bring security risks. So we leave that back door open. And just like in real life, you leave that back door open, you're going to have coyotes in your house, right? It's powerful and flexible, but as your system grows, it can get more complex and harder to secure. Instead of having a central system reach into every cluster to make changes, which can be risky and harder to manage, Akuity flips that around. It injects an agent inside each of your Kubernetes clusters. Think of the agent as a trusted helper that lives inside the cluster. So it handles things like deploying your apps, keeping everything in sync, and reporting it all back to the Akuity platform. This approach has a few benefits. So it's more secure because you don't need to open up access from the outside. So that backdoor stays closed. No coyotes, right? I like, having a home not full of coyotes. I mean, if they're there, they got to pay rent. And then we have a more reliable solution with an agent-based architecture because everything happens locally inside the cluster. So that means that everything you need is already inside. So that way we don't have to open up, like I said, so all the coyotes come in. And it's easier to manage, especially when you have multiple clusters, because that way, like, you have to keep control of over all the clusters that it's in. But with the Akuity platform, like, it's a lot easier because we have the agent, and that way it talks to the other clusters. So Akuity injects agents inside each cluster to do work from the inside out, keeping your deployment safe, smooth, and scalable. So if you're just getting started or you want full control, Argo CD might be your best bet. If you're looking for a smoother, enterprise-ready experience, Akuity can help take on the heavy load. So in this demo, I'm going to show how to deploy with the Akuity platform. If you're excited to try this out yourself, it's easier than you think. All you need is a Kubernetes cluster, a GitHub account, and an Akuity account. So I have up on the screen a QR code for my GitHub repository. So this will show like the code that I'm working with. And as you can see, it's like 3 files, and they're not even like super long files. You can kick things off with a free trial and explore at your own pace as well. So if you want to work off of my repository, feel free to clone it, right? I've included comments on each line of the manifest, so that way you know what they do, right? Because if you have like all this code and you don't know what it does, then you don't best understand how it works. So let's go ahead and show my repository first, and then I'll show you what it looks like in the Akuity platform. All right, so let's move here to my GitHub repository. So this is what it will look like when you click the app. I have a README here that gives an overview of what this app does. I tried to cut down, no technical jargon here. It would tell you straight up what it does. So all it does is it deploys an Nginx application. So this is extremely beginner friendly. So if you want to play with this, you can. You just clone it. So we have a simple example to show how to use Argo CD, a tool that helps you automatically deploy applications to Kubernetes using a method called GitOps. So you should already know this by now. I have some features enabled. These are features that I personally really like about Argo CD. We have autosync, which automatically deploys changes committed to Git. We have self-heal, which detects and corrects drift in cluster state. And we have prune, which removes the Kubernetes resources that were deleted from Git. And then I have some links as well. We have the Argo CD official docs, and we also have GitOps info. So this is like a really good repo that you'd want to look at when you're just starting off in Argo CD. All right, now to the app.yaml, we have here my app. It's a very simple app, and you'll see it. So if I were coding this right now, I only see this. I don't actually see what it looks like, right? And then here we have deployment. This is just all instructions. This is my desired state. I tell Kubernetes, I tell Argo CD, this is what I want everything to look like. And then here's service YAML. So that way I'm using the network service for my application. It's just complicated stuff. It just helps it works, basically. So here is the Akuity platform. So we have the application metrics here. So I can see like, I have a very healthy cluster right now, and my application is synced, but it always didn't look like that, because here you can see in deployment frequency, I was getting a bunch of failed deployments. I was out of sync a lot. So it actually, if you can see, I solved it within a day, because Argo CD actually helped me out and showed me what was wrong. Whereas if you remember from my capstone, I didn't know what was wrong. So that's why I'm like saying, like, please use Argo CD. Don't suffer like how I did when I was in college. Let's see, let's go ahead and see it in action here. So this is Argo CD. It's pretty straight to the point. So we have our app here. All the apps are kept here. And then we have my service, YAML, remember that? And then we have the app here. Here's the application, the deployments. As you see, there's like 2 of them, right? These are what we call replica sets. So I mentioned before, like you can ask Kubernetes to create multiple versions of something for you. So think of it like a vending machine, right? So if somebody buys something in a vending machine and they take a soda, another one will just go straight up front, right? So if one of these go down, then I have another one to go back to. Let's see, do we have any questions here? All right, looks like a lot of them are already being answered. We have some in the Q&A as well. I will get to that. But yeah, this is, if you want to see it again, this is the dashboard for deployments on Akuity platform. We have my repo, the link is in the chat, and this is the final product. All right, so now that we talked about that, let's go ahead and come back here. So let's review. Before, let's see, I have some more questions here. Is Argo CD created as a container on Kubernetes? No, Argo CDs is not a container on Kubernetes.
Argo CD. Well, it's technically in a pod, right? So,
Yes.
and then how can one access the dashboard? So, when you deploy Argo CD, you can either this is kind of also in the weeds, but just high level something for you to Google or Chat GPT, I guess people are doing now, um, to ask is you port forward the uh um the Argo CD server component, right? So there's a service called Argo CD server, and you just port forward that into yeah, so it's a pod that has a service. Yeah, so basically you port forward the service, or you can create an ingress. Argo CD doesn't provide the ingress out of the box, but it's pretty easy to create one. I've created one in the past. If you're deploying Argo CD with a Helm chart, the Helm chart has a convenient option to do that. So lots of option for you to for everyone. IODEL, I guess I think probably pronouncing that wrong, but a lot of options for you to Google there.
Yeah, so don't want to use the term container. You want to use the word pod, right? Because there's a
Yeah.
difference between the both of them. And
Yeah.
then, so I can use Helm to deploy Argo CD. Absolutely, you can use Helm to deploy Argo CD. So you can deploy Helm charts, you can use customize, but those are a little bit more intermediate level. So we won't really talk about that today. Let's see, Argo CD installation can be leveraged like a pod, meaning if you list it down, yes, okay. So can you put your repo link here? Let's go ahead, drop the repo link one more time into the chat. I can do that too, since I have it open. Right. And let's see what else. Basic differences between Argo CD versus Flux CD. So that is a little bit more higher level, but we do have resources available. I believe we have a blog post about that as well on the Akuity website. And we also have a YouTube video talking about it, but we also are going to have more content based on that shortly. To see, hi team, I want to register app of apps also along with installation with Helm. Will it be possible?
Not with Helm. You wouldn't be able to do that with Helm.
All right. So
Short
sounds
answer, sorry. Not possible with Helm. Probably a good RFE, but for the Helm community for the Argo Helm project, you can find that in the Argo project repo there if you want to put that out there.
okay. Someone said new to Argo CD and wanted to know if Argo CD and Terra Grunt can work together. So have Argo CD listen to Terra Grunt for changes.
Oh, TerraGrunt. So Argo CD only manages, so if you want, Argo CD only manages Kubernetes resources. So anything outside of that, you won't be able to do, without some sort of broker, like Crossplane, I think is the biggest one that people use, or Pulumi is another one, but I think Crossplane is like the biggest one if you want to manage anything outside. Um, but if you want to do it the other way, if you want to use like Terraform, right, or TerraGrunt or whatever, in anything OpenTofu or Terraform related, we have a Terraform provider. So the Argo project has a Terraform provider, meaning that you can use our open source Terraform provider to install and upgrade Argo CD. So depends on which side you're coming from. If you're coming from the infra, want to instantiate Argo CD, we have a provider. But if you want Argo CD to manage um, uh, Terraform things, that's not possible. You have to use some sort of Argo CD only manages Kubernetes resources.
Okay. One last comment I have here. It says, nice layout of comments in the YAML manifest. I'll definitely do that with my manifest. Definitely add comments to your code, just as a whole. When I was working with like a team of engineers, like nobody would put comments on anything. And it's just like really difficult for other people to understand what you mean in your code because everyone codes differently. Like there's like new shorthand ways you can do things and not everyone's familiar with them. So highly recommend just put comments on everything.
Yeah, and just in general, I think also with AI coming around, I use Copilot, and using Copilot, the more I use comments, the faster I start coding, because then Copilot starts learning like my comments and he goes, "Oh, Chris, he wants to use this, function or whatever," and then they'll just like automatically. So it actually makes you, for those who code, makes you a better coder, or for those who are using AI, it actually it starts learning once you start typing a comment. it like automatically you just become faster. So just in general, just a general practice, do comments, especially now with AI, it makes things easier.
Yes. You're doing everyone a service too. Like if you're working in a big team, that way they know what you're talking about or what that line of code does. So let's review really quick. Let's tie everything together. So we talked about Kubernetes and GitOps, two key building blocks that will help make understanding Argo CD so much easier. So as you can see, we have our little building blocks. I wasn't showing it. We have our little building blocks, Kubernetes, GitOps, right? We all have a better understanding of Argo CD, I hope. And then I don't see any questions about any concepts right now, but if you ever have a question, we also have the Akuity Discord as well. It's akuity.community. It should take you to the invite. You can ask your questions there. We even have like a beginners channel. So I will be watching that. If you have any questions about any of the concepts I talked about and I didn't get to, or maybe I didn't get to your question today, we can put it in the Akuity Discord. Now, I would love to hear from you. Drop a message in the chat. What's one new thing that you learned today? So go ahead, share in the chat. What's something new that you didn't know about Argo CD, Kubernetes, GitOps? And just share in the chat so we can see like, hey, I learned something new today. Hey, I know a little bit more about Kubernetes. I know why people are using GitOps. I know why people are using Argo CD. Someone said, I didn't know about Cargo, right? So we actually have like a lot of guides and we have some YouTube videos as well about Cargo. So if you really want to go down into that Cargo rabbit hole, that's available too. The quiz first question, I like to hear that. Yes. So I put the quizzes in there to see if anyone's paying attention. It's also like a good way to help it stick to your brain, right? Cargo is not known to me as well. Yes. So like I said earlier, we have a beginner guide as well on our Akuity website on Cargo. We have YouTube videos as well. I learned that Argo CD could be deployed using Helm. Yeah. Argo CD is like a really like flexible tool. It has like a compatibility with like a lot of other tools, which I like.
Yeah, I that's the main way I deploy Argo CD now is for those that you don't that don't know, originally the Helm the Argo CD Helm repository wasn't officially supported by the community and now is supported. So now that's just my primary way of deploying Argo CD. That's like it for any best practice, like if just baseline best practice, just use the Helm chart from the official Argo project repository. I'll drop that link down now.
All right. And then like see, not related to Argo CD webinar, but glad to hear the Redis drama ended as well. I'm guessing that's happened in the chat. And then image updater. Yeah, it's pretty good thing to know, right? So save you a lot of time of having to manually update yourself. So when I was doing my capstone, I was manually updating all my dependencies myself. Would not recommend. Use the image updater. See. Anyone else want to share something new that they learned today? Or this, you guys are all experts now. You already knew this, right? All right. Now that we've got the basics in place, why stop here, right? Let's check out these resources to keep the momentum going and deepen your learning. So I'm going to pass the baton to Christian, and he's going to share some quick resources that you guys can use to get a better understanding of Argo CD and its best practices.
Yeah, so for the better part of last year, meaning all of last year, I spent a lot of time writing a book. So me and one of my ex-coworkers at Red Hat, we got together and wrote a book, Argo CD Up and Running. This was a collection of information and kind of just insider information, kind of best practices that over the years that I've learned and that Andrew's learned, like we both work with our respective customers over the years, implementing Argo CD and deploying it for production. And we decided to write a book, and then Akuity, right, was uh, was so kind to sponsor this book and making it available to you, everyone. So right now it's early release, meaning it's a very, very rough copy of the book, but feel free to download it, to take a read to it. Keep this link handy because later on this year we have right now the book is in print, so we've actually finished all. If you find any errors, just ignore them because we've already found them. Like we've already found them, we fixed them. It's to print. We hopefully this will be out full release or GA, I guess, for those who want to use that vernacular, in hopefully in November by the time KubeCon North America happens, right? So right now it's out to print, and but you can get an early release now, right? You get a rough copy, full book. Keep this link handy, like I said before, because once it comes out, you can download the full version once it's out. Again, thank you to Akuity for sponsoring this book. Me and Andrew over at Red Hat are very fortunate that Akuity decided to sponsor that. And then we're passing that on to you. So now download the free ebook here, and then again, stay in tune for the full release later on this year.
All right. And then the next one is a webinar. So if you like sitting in the webinar setting, getting your learning that way, Christian will tell you about this one.
Yeah, so we have a series that we call Masterclass. It's kind of like a semi-regular series. Semi meaning that we actually just do it. We don't have like a regular schedule, right? My goal is to have at least once a quarter. Sometimes it'll be more, sometimes it won't. But the idea here is being that we take advanced concepts for Argo CD and dive deep into one subject. So we had one last time. Again, go to the Akuity YouTube channel. There was a masterclass there, talked about Argo CD application projects. So we dove really, really deep, and we had kind of like a workshop, hands-on workshop. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to do Argo CD application configuration patterns, right? We're going to dive deep into customize, deep into Helm, how to deploy and manage sync operations for your applications. Again, it's going to be hands-on. There's going to be presentation, workshop. You're going to get a Git repo. It's going to have all that goodie for you. So register now, like basically 2 weeks from today. We're going to have the masterclass, and then we're going to dive really, really deep into applications, Argo CD applications.
All right. So now that you learned the basics from this webinar, you can become the master with the master classes.
Exactly.
All right. I don't see any more questions in the chat. Looks like we answered a huge majority of them, but in case I missed it from my scrolling, I left a link to the Discord invite. So just go ahead and ask them in the beginners chat, the Argo CD chat, whatever you prefer, and I will get to them, or Christian might find them first. Do you have any contents in the social media, YouTube mainly, on machine learning tooling with Argo CD? Currently, we don't have any YouTube videos on machine learning tooling with Argo CD.
That is a great idea. We also we maybe do a webinar with the MCP server. We have an Argo CD MCP server, but that's not really machine learning. Machine learning is more on Argo workflows. So it's more like on that side of AI and actually doing machine learning versus generative AI, which is like the resulting right of doing machine learning. So we don't have anything yet, but that's really good feedback. That's very something we'll take a look at.
All right. So big thank you to all of you for being here today. I hope you had as much as fun as I did, and that you're walking away today with some fresh insights and confidence in Argo CD. So keep exploring, stay curious, and I'll see you all next time.